If I have a child with someone who is inbred, is the newborn inbred by default? Well, you don't hear of people being outbred. I mean, the more non-familial DNA, the less risk of birth defects. So it wouldn't increase the chances if you aren't related to the person as well. And I think technically even first cousins can have children without defects. It's the social factors that are the issue. If you have to ask yourself, is this too close, chances are it is. Whatever you are thinking about doing, just stop. Let's leave the weird social end aside and just talk genetics. Inbreeding compounds generation by generation. So if you marry your cousin, you have a moderate increase in birth defects along your kids. But this gets much worse very quickly if you repeat it every generation. The other question is interesting. If you married someone very inbred and you weren't already related, you'd be fine. If you were related, you'd be compounding existing issues and there would be problems. Roll Tide. Lol, it would be so inbred you could put it on the Subway menu. 1. Less so than the parent. 2. I think the correct medical answer is like third cousins. But the reality is that if you can easily and correctly describe the relationship to a stranger with no context, it's too close. This feels rural. There's billions of people in the world and you want your cousin? I knew a woman who was perfectly normal and had 3 normal, healthy children. Found out later her bio parents were siblings. Not consensual. Other than a lot of therapy. No defects, so to speak. It's not always guaranteed. I like to think that was the universe not punishing her for the mistakes of her parent. Nah. The term inbred is kind of a slang that means parents too closely related, but it varies depending on society. It's not 100% genetically disastrous to have too close genetics in a single generation. Because of how gametes, sex cells like ova and sperm, are created. So we have 23 pairs of chromosomes on the inside of the nucleus of each cell. Pairs because you get a set from mom and a set from dad. But gamete creation involves having that data. Because when it meets another gamete, you want to have one set from mom and one set from dad. So a man's sperm is one half of the stuff, the instructions it took to create him. Same for women and their ova. How those are mixed and matched is basically random. Not every great trait you have gets passed on. But also, not every disaster is passed on either. Then lots of things. You only need one good copy to carry the story forward. So that child may carry a time bomb. But there is no guarantee that will make it into the mix next generation. And even if it does make it into the sperm or egg, the partner's good copy can carry the story forward. So inbreeding is really a numbers game. Your best bet of diluting problems comes from everyone having fresh, unseen copies. It's a problem when both parties have a bad copy. So their offspring will only have bad copies to choose from in gamete production. As long as their offspring doesn't also breed with a partner with no good copies, there is a chance the fresh blood will bring a good copy and cover the bet. And keep the story moving forward. Usually, the only time societies have an inbreeding problem is when a group is trapped in a confined geography with a low number of children surviving to adulthood. And it keeps happening. This can artificially happen when the economic incentives outweigh human instincts to not marry siblings, such as in royal families. But the noticeable problems show up on an exponential geographic curve. Like the first generation has a certain % odds of problems. Then it keeps getting worse the more choke points. So after a dozen generations you have high odds off blood disorders and deformities. The Habsburg jaw and hemophilia come to mind. Not a day one problem. There are 46 chromosomes in every cell in your body. Sperm has 23. An egg has 23. So the inbred you're dating is giving 23 chromosomes to the child you want to make. If the individual who is inbred consanguinity is your cousin, that's asking for major genetic defects if a child resulted. I've seen the consequences of brother-sister with a family that had multiple instances of incest. The anomalies were incompatible with life. I don't think so. No. I would think if anything, not being related to the parent of your child would make them less inbred, so to speak. I can't believe I am admitting this on the internet, but I have 2 cousins that have a baby together. The cousins in question are actually my second cousins, but they themselves are first cousins, meaning their mothers are sisters. Generally, I think second cousins are considered pretty far removed, at least in the Western world. But I'm Latina and that's not how my family culturally identifies. A cousin is a cousin. So we were pretty mortified. Everyone always thought they were way too close for comfort, but no one ever really saw them do anything inappropriate outside of excessive hugging, always being together, etc. Female cousin already had 1 child from a previous relationship. That is biracial. So when she announced her second pregnancy, she claimed the child belonged to her ex-husband despite them being separated. Second baby comes and is mysteriously white, but all babies look different. Then her ex-husband denied being the father and says that they separated because he came home from work and caught her fooling around with our cousin. Then our male cousin gets super upset and says he can't take it anymore. He has to claim his child. They did a paternity test and it did indeed prove that he fathered our cousin's kid. The baby was born with some developmental issues, but no one has said if those issues are related to mom and dad being first cousins. The newborn would be less inbred, but still be a little inbred by virtue of being born to someone inbred. My great-great-grandparents were first cousins. That makes me a little inbred. Many cultures have practiced what's called line breeding, wherein people married only within their group and often married cousins, some more frequently than others. Over time, these groups show some genetic drift. Ashkenazi Jews, for example, often have a lot of congenital conditions associated with the gene pool, along with many desirable traits as well. All European Jews are 30th cousins or closer. Fun fact: Albert Einstein married his first cousin. Then you have royal families which historically tried to copy the biblical patriarchs and went further with the inbreeding to TH's point of severe defects, as seen in the Habsburgs. The thing is, at a certain point, we're all a little inbred. In fact, beyond that, all humans besides sub-Saharan Africans went through a population bottleneck that made them all technically more inbred overall, but they had Neanderthal and Denisovan genes to spruce up the pool. Denisovan genes are what gave the Tibetan his adaptation to the high altitude, low oxygen environment. It's speculated that much of the historical line breeding you see in history was done in an effort to preserve this ancient, unreplenishable DNA from no extinct hominids. Yes, that's how genetics work.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.